Thank you. Okay, the bottom of your aleph on base about 6-7 lines up. Masnisen, the low kiatana. So this was still talking about taking off the shutters of somebody had a kind of closet that he had his the spices for sale, and we wanted to make sure that it'll be open for Yom Tov to sell to other people. And there's a problem about taking off the shutters, putting them back on, about bona. And Beis Shammai says that you're not allowed to take it off, to open up because some kind of soser. You're taking off the doors off the closet, and Beis Hillel says you're allowed to take it off, you're even allowed to put it back on again. And that was yesterday's Gemara that said the reason why Beis Hillel even allows you to put it back on might be because he was so for Mishum Tchilasan. If you're not going to let him to close up shop, he's not going to open up shop. So that was yesterday's sugya. What was a brisa that argues in our Mishnah, and our Mishnah was extreme. Beis Shammai says he's not allowed to even take off the doors. Beis Hillel says even allowed to put them back on. So it was extreme. And the brisa is not so extreme. Masisa Loki Atana, our Mishnah is against the following brisa. Loki Atana, the Tanya Amr Shem ben Elazar, he's also a Tana, so he argues in our Mishnah. Modern Beis Shammai Beis Hillel Shemasal Knesset Shreis B'Yom Tov. Even Beis Shammai agrees that you're allowed to open up shop. You're allowed to take off the shutters in order to open up your closet to sell. The Machlokes is allowed to return it. Means this far we said about that if you're not going to allow him to close it up, he's not going to open it up. That Beis Shammai doesn't hold up. The Beis Shammai says ein machzir, you're not allowed to close it, to return it, to close it, the door. We say alone, we're not machzir. So that's Machlokes. It doesn't affect Beis Hillel really because Beis Hillel doesn't change. You're allowed to open up, you're allowed to close it. So Chiddush of Shem ben Elazar, that Beis Shammai also would agree that you're allowed to open up take off the doors. Then the brisa continues, another point. So we didn't talk about this till now. We just talked about shutters, Twisin. We didn't talk about any details about them. But here it talks about tzir. Tzir is what we call a hinge. The hinges of today are a little different than the hinges of old. We have the old hinges also nowadays. I think the example would be something like by the bathroom stalls that they have on the top and on the bottom. And also, let's say by the chorva, the huge doors when you come in. So there's one going into the floor, one going into the lintel. That's the tzir of the olden days. A peg comes out of the bottom of the door, and top of the door fits in on top and on the bottom. So now we're talking about these doors, these trisin, that they fit into the closet, the way of closing the door. So does it have tzirim? Does it have these hinges? So
it's like a pivot.
Right, on top and on the bottom, right. And you have usually you'd have two of them, one on the bottom, one on the top, right? Pivot, okay. And then you'd have, means the word hinge is not correct because only modern hinges.
Fits on the pivot. Pivots on the pivot.
Very good. Okay, beautiful.
Hinges on the pivot.
Hinges on the pivot. Okay. So
I have two illustrations here if that would help.
Yes, thank you.
I don't know how, so here's the one you were talking about. It has two hinges.
And it fits into this frame.
Fits into this frame, yeah.
Frame. That's not. It's like a box, let's say, and it'll fit in to close it up. Okay, good. So now if you
I have this other picture. I don't know why I have this other picture too. Here's like a one.
This is going to be the next Gemara that's going to say that this is another scenario that's called Minatzat. But we need that also. There's going to be another one. You only have one if it's inside. Good, beautiful. Thank you. Helps very much. So back to the. What are we doing here? So this brisa says that when is the Mishnah talking about? When it has a tzir. Aval, 3 lines up. Aval, ein lahem tzir. If they are no tzir, let's take it literally. There are no tzirim at all. There's not just a board. You take the board, then you stick it into this closet, and that's how it closes up. But there's no pivots, no strings attached, no nothing. So then it's permissible. Even Beis Shammai, everything's going to be permissible. There's no problem of being a steel kelim since it doesn't connect at all. It's just a board that fits in. That's one brisa. Very nice. But now another brisa seems to argue. Latanya, we went to a different brisa. The machlokes is when there's no of these pivots. Even Hillel is going to be machmir if there connects with a tzir. So we have a contradiction. The brisa of the is kind of contradicting. If Beis Shammai is going to be lenient, the Beis Hillel is going to be machmir. How are we going to reconcile? Bottom line of Yudal Chomid Beis. So Rashi explains that the two brises are not arguing. They're using a different terminology, but both of them mean the same thing. And the way it comes out is that there are three scenarios. The two that Levi Yaakov showed us, that either it has minatzad, which the Gemara calls top and bottom, the regular pivots, the regular hinges, pivots that you'd have on top and on bottom. That's the most extreme case. And then you have the case where it has only one in the middle. The other picture that Levi Yaakov showed us, that's not so serious because it doesn't mamish connect well. It only has some peg on the side of the board that fits into the middle. And there's another case where it has no peg at all. And what both brises mean to say is that if there's no peg at all, even Beis Shammai is going to allow you to put it on and off because it's not considered building at all. If it has both on top and on bottom, even Beis Hillel is going to say that it's aser, and the machlokes of Beis Shammai Beis Hillel has only one. Mar Savar, let's jump to the next page, top of Yud Beis, Mar Savar Gazrinan, Tzir Be'emsa Otu Tzir Menatzad, Mar Savar Lo Gazrinan. Beis Hillel, Beis Shammai is machmir, and he says, one of these pegs only in the middle. It's also what the usher, because you might, if you do that, then you might also come to do and put it back on and off, even if you have on top and bottom. And Beis Hillel says you don't say the Gzeira. There's a Ramban that explains the machlokes because according to Beis Shammai, there could be binyan ustira b'kelim. So if you have on top and on bottom, it's really the Raisa. According to Beis Hillel, even if you have on top and on bottom, since it's only kelim, so ain't binyan ustira b'kelim and it's only Rabbanan. The reason why it doesn't say that it's usher in that case is because Gzeira Shem Yitka, that you might be tokeya, you might wedge it in, and that'll be even if it's kelim also. If you be tokeya like with a screw and your hammer, you're banging a nail, then it's going to be us even according to Beis Hillel. So that's why it's only the Rabbanan, Shema Yitka, and by Tzir Be'emsa, they won't go in. Just to sum up what we learned over there, this whole mission spoke about opening the closets, taking off the door, putting it back on again. So after Gemara finished, Beis Hillel is extreme that it's mutter, that even to put it back on again, that's the svara called Yitiru Sofa Mishum Tchilasan. If you're not going to let him to put it, but to close it up again, he's not going to open up, and we want him to open up, and therefore we matter him even to close it again. Excuse me, I'm sorry. Yes. Yes, what? I'm going to share.
Right now, new mission.
Okay, come. Okay, and so he said that it's not according to Beis Hillel, but the exception was, but the Gemara ended off that if you have a tzir on top and on bottom, the regular way that you have these pivot hinges, so then even according to Beis Hillel, it's asa. The rest of the Gemara was talking about Beis Shammai. Maybe Beis Shammai also is going to be matir sometimes. That doesn't affect us. We go like Beis Hillel, that is mutter, and even to put it back on. The only exception was if it had a tzir on top and bottom.
And the top and bottom, everybody holds that they still say no?
Right, but that's the Gemara, yeah, right. And the only issue is that they point out, Tyson points out that even that's not going to be the Raisa because we still hold and bin Yistir B'Kelim. The only reason why it's going to be us is because you might start using tools in a way that you might be Tokeya, and if you're going to wedge it in, then it might be in Mlacha the Raisa. New Mishnah, new subject altogether. This we didn't hear about. We had the past couple of Mishnahs, we had a preview, a few pages that told us five Mishnahs in a row. So the ones till now we had a little bit preview, but now it's a new Mishnah. You're not allowed to take out on to the Rishus HaRabim. 1 second, please. Yes, everybody could mute. Okay. Back on again. Sorry. So this is a question about carrying Yantif. So everybody knows you're allowed to carry on Yantif, but it's not so simple. Maybe why should they be allowed to carry? As far as we know, the only permission of Yantif different than Shabbos is Ochel Nefesh. Things you need for food, you're allowed to do. Whatever you need for food, you're allowed to do. Even that also is limited. It doesn't mean everything. It doesn't mean you can go to the field and cut down. You can't be kosher. There's also limitations how much you're allowed to do for food. But here we're talking about carrying not for food. Not because you need to eat something. So Beis Shammai says you're not allowed to take out a child or a lulav, for even those for a mitzvah, or say for Torah, you want to learn. You're not allowed to carry a yantif on Rishus HaRabim. Different kind of a yantif according to Beis Shammai, not allowed to carry. He still holds you allowed to. The Gemara is going to talk about what is a machlokes. What's the basis of this machlokes if you're allowed to carry on yantif? So the Gemara starts. I'll just give a little hakdama to make it a little bit easier. There's a concept called mitoch. Mitoch shutru l'tzarech u'tishalo l'tzarech. That when the Torah says you're allowed to do malacha for ochel nefesh, for food, So you can understand that the Torah says that those malachas that are necessary for ochel nefesh, there's no prohibition on those malachas. It doesn't mean only if you're doing it for food. It means those malachas which are usually necessary to make food or something for food. So there's no prohibition on Yom Tov. If so, even if you're not doing it for food, it could also the Torah didn't prohibit it because it's a malacha which is sometimes necessary for food. Let's say sewing. Sewing has nothing to do with food. So you're not allowed to sew on Yom Tov. But cooking, you're allowed to cook. How about if you're going to be cooking water, let's say not for the purpose of drinking, other purposes? So you might say that the Torah didn't permit it, only for food. But it could be that those malachas which are necessary for food, the Torah didn't put it into the list. Only those malachas which are never used for food. That's called mitoch shutfil l'tzorach, shalol l'tzorach. Since it was permitted for necessity of food, so the Torah permits it even not necessity of food. That's going to be a sword that we're going to say maybe there's the reason of Beis Hillel. The reason why it's mutter, even though it's not for food, is because it's a malacha which is sometimes used for food. You have to bring food across the street. You're not to carry food. So therefore, the Torah might have permitted it completely. That's going to be what the Gemara might consider the Pshat Mishnah. So
then you would have a problem with a talus or.
then what? You'd be allowed to carry.
You'd be not allowed to carry. What does the talus have to do with food?
Again, yeah, according to Beis Shammai, you're not allowed to carry a talus.
Right.
Beis Shammai,
According to Beis Hillel,
you are allowed to, because since it's a malacha which is sometimes necessary for food,
a talus?
no carrying.
Oh, carrying. Oh.
Carrying, yeah, not this particular thing. Since the malacha called, you're not allowed to carry, of the 39 malachas, some of them are used for food. So that malacha, we're going to say that since carrying is sometimes necessary for food, so then even if you're not doing it for food, it's all right. And that's the example there of a katan, lulav, sefer Torah, even though it's not for food, but it's mutter because it's a kind of malacha which is sometimes used for food. That's what the Gemara is going to entertain, the possibility of our Mishnah. And then the Gemara is going to discuss if that's the right shot. Tani Tana, so we start the Gemara. Tani Tana made the Rav Yitzchak bar Avdimi. Tana said over a brisa in front of Rav Yitzchak bar Avdimi. He told him the following brisa: Hashochet olas tadav b'yom tov loken. 5 words. That's the brisa. If somebody shechts a voluntary korban ola on Yom Tov, he brought a korban, but you're not supposed to because it's not obligatory korban. It's a nedava. It's not like the Shalmei Chagiga, the Olas Riyah. It's a nedava. You could bring it on Chol Hamoed. You can bring it next week. You don't have to bring it today. So it says you're not allowed to do that. It was not very, and he's Chayv Malchus. He thinks he did a big mitzvah, but he's Chayv Malchus because he did malach on Yom Tov that he shechted. He shechted an animal, not for food. An ola is not eaten. So he shechted an animal for a korban. So he's Chayv Malchus because he did malacha. That was the brisa that somebody said over to Rav Yitzchak bar Avdimi. Amalei, Rav Yitzchak bar Avdimi said over to that man, the author of this brisa must be Beis Shammai. Why? Because in our Mishnah he says that you're not allowed to carry. Why? Because you're not doing it for ochel nefesh, you're not doing it for food. Even though it's a malacha which is sometimes done for ochel nefesh, Beis Shammai holds you don't say this for mitoch. You don't say that since it's mutter for ochel nefesh, it's mutter also not for ochel nefesh. But according to Beis Hillel, any malacha which is mutter for ochel nefesh is mutter even not for ochel nefesh. So according to him, you'd be allowed to shecht, or at least you wouldn't be chayiv if you shechted a korban, even though you're not eating it. Since shechita is sometimes done for food, so you wouldn't be chayiv even if you did it not for food. If you hold it as far as mitoch. Amalei. Again inside, the author of this brisa is Beis Shammai. Why? In our Mishnah, they say that you don't say that since it's mutter to carry, if you do it for ochel nefesh, it's mutter to carry even not for ochel nefesh. The Beis Hillel, because Beis Hillel wouldn't agree, because they say in our Mishnah, if you since you're allowed to carry if you need it for food, you're also allowed to carry with the raisa, even if you don't need it for food. And therefore, in this case of shchita, shchita is also kind of malacha that you need for food. Carrying you need for food, and also shchita is all you need for food. So since shchita is mutter for food, so then it would be mutter even if you're not doing it for food. So the brisa can't say that you'd be chayiv for shechting a korban ola on Yom Tov. You shouldn't be chayiv. Shchita is a kind of a malacha which is mutter l'tzarech ochel nefesh, so it's going to be a mutter, at least pater. You wouldn't be chayiv malchus even if you did it not for ochel nefesh. That was Rav Yitzchak bar Avdimi. So if we zoom out a second, he says, Pshat Mishnah. The Mishnah doesn't say any reason. The Mishnah says that Beis Hillel says it's mutter to carry a sefer Torah, a lulav, a katan. Doesn't say why. So Rav Yitzchak bar Avdimi said the pshat is because mitoch, since it's mutter for ochel nefesh, this kind of malacha. So this malacha is not in the category of malachas of Yom Tov, and it's mutter even if it's doing it for ochel nefesh.
Rebbe, what's the havamina that mitoch covers his tamsus of Isser?
I don't understand the question.
We're saying that to shecht for an oila is an usser, and it's an Isser.
Who
So
says it's saying according to Beis Hillel, it wouldn't be usher. or at least it wouldn't be daraisa, because you're allowed to shecht. Since you're allowed to shecht for nefesh, you're allowed to shecht even if it's not for nefesh. So why are you saying that it's usher? It's not usher. He's saying the same way you're allowed to carry a talus in the street, or Sefer Torah, you're allowed to shecht even not for nefesh. That's what it seems to say so far. The Brisa says that you're not allowed to chayiv malchus, only b'shamai. We still will say that it's mutter. We'll get soon if it's also b'rabbanan or not. But so far, the Gemara seems to say that it's mutter according to Hillel, and you're allowed to shecht because you're allowed to shecht for food. So you're allowed to shecht not for food. That's the Gemara's shot so far. Maskef top line here. Maskef l'Rabba mimayde b'shama b'Hillel b'hapligi. But Rabba is going to challenge the whole idea in the pshat in our Mishnah. Who says that that's pshat b'Hillel? So far, without making a point out of it, he said, for a matter of fact, that the pshat in our Mishnah, the reason why B'Hillel says you're allowed to carry is because mitoch. Since you're allowed to carry for ochel nefesh, you're allowed to carry not for ochel nefesh. And now Rabba is challenging that whole idea. Who says? B'Shama b'Hillel b'hapligi? Dilma be'er b'Hillel Shabbos ve'ner er b'Hillel yom tikvam yifligi. There's an idea out there in the Gemara now that maybe the issur of carrying doesn't apply to Yantif. There are 39 malachas on Shabbos. On Yantif, there are 38. Maybe Hotzah is an exception. Not the pshat Amish is not because this general idea, whatever is mutter for ochel nefesh is mutter not for ochel nefesh. There's an idea that maybe the malach of carrying doesn't apply to Yantif, not because of ochel nefesh. Let's say you don't hold a mitoch, and you're not allowed to shecht only for ochel nefesh, you're not allowed to cook only for ochel nefesh. All these things only with ochel nefesh. Not allowed, but the issur of carrying doesn't apply at all to Yantif. I think Gemara is going to bring a pasuk in Yirmiyah that maybe is a reference to that the issur of carrying doesn't apply to Yantif at all. If so, the reason why they still says in our Mishnah you're allowed to carry is after carrying, and you can't apply it to anything else. You can't apply it to shchita. Shchita is solely a malacha. There's only mutter for ochel nefesh. Then you have mitoch. Maybe B'Hillel doesn't know. Maybe the whole thing have mitoch. Maybe take it out. No such thing as mitoch. There's no such thing as mitoch. Maybe the only reason that B'Hillel says you're allowed to carry is because carrying is not a malacha on Yantif, and that's called erev otzah. Erev means like erevin, that there's a din to make an erev, even in Rosh Hashanah, if you have many neighbors and many houses in one courtyard. So in order to carry in the courtyard, you have to make an erev. We learned all about erevin. So some say that the din of halachas of erevin and the whole halacha of carrying hotzah, carrying out from Rosh Hashanah to Rosh Hashanah applies to Shabbos, but it doesn't apply to Yantif. It's inside the words. Maskef l'Rabba. Rabbi asked, who says arguing about this machlokes? If you say mitoch, no. And no one knows a mitoch. The arguing in the concept if the halachas of erevin and carrying apply to Yantif at all. Marsava erev Shabbos erev Yantif. Beishamai holds that the halachas of carrying apply to Yantif also. Or Marsava Beisil holds erev Shabbos and erev Yantif. There's no issur of carrying on Yantif period, and it's only one halacha that doesn't exist. Give the chsiv, the pasuk in Yirmiyah, below Sotziu, Masami Boteichen, B'Yom HaShabbos. Over there, Yirmiyah is warning the people to be Shomer Shabbos, and it says there's other mitzvahs over there also, and it says don't carry out on Shabbos, and he stresses on Shabbos, B'Yom HaShabbos, and you're not allowed to carry Yantif either. It's also a malacha. Of course, if it's ochel nefesh, you're allowed to do ochel nefesh, you're allowed to shecht also for ochel nefesh, you're allowed to do a lot of things for ochel nefesh, you're allowed to cook, you're allowed to make a fire. But since he specifies don't carry on Shabbos, so there's a drash to say b'Shabbos in b'Yom Tov. There's no issur of carrying. So now we have two possible pshatim in our Mishnah. One pshat is that there are 39 malachas and Yantif also, but whatever's mutter for ochel nefesh is mutter even not for ochel nefesh. And the other pshat is that no such heter of mitoch, just because the mutter for ochel nefesh, that's all. It's not mutter not for ochel nefesh, but it happens to be there's no such malacha called carrying on Yantif. So we have two possible pshatim in our Mishnah. But Rabbi Yosef is going to go back, retort, and say that your pshat can't be pshat in our Mishnah. Maskef Rabbi Yosef, I'm going to say Rashi. Right. The halachas of erevin, that the same way the issur of tzami is not allowed to carry from Rosh Hashanah to Rosh Hashanah, the Raisa, so they also made the rabbanan that you're not allowed to carry in Rosh Hashanah if you have different houses that are that share a courtyard. So with rabbanan you need an eruv. No, that's what we're talking about. This is our subject that you're not allowed to carry. We're talking about are you allowed to carry on Yantif? That's what we're talking about. Where this is the subject. Why is B'Hillel say that it's mutter? Is it because there's a erev Tzal Shabbos and erev Tzal Yantif also? Bishamai says yes, and B'Hillel says no. Ain't erev Tzal Yantif. So there's not a kasha. That B'Hillel is saying that the halachas of Yantif of Tzal don't apply.
No, but according to Shammai,
You're not allowed to carry. Yes. Yes, that's what says the Mishnah. Mishnah says we're not used to it because we think Yantif, everyone's going in the street carrying. That's only B'Hillel people. If you go to Beishamai town, over there nobody's carrying. They're carrying only a pot of food, a bottle of wine, but they're not carrying anything else. Not carrying a lulav. They're not carrying a lulav either on Yantif. Look at that. According to Basil, you're not allowed to carry a lulav on Yantif. Bring the lulav before Yantif, it seems. You're not allowed to carry a lulav. It's not ochel nefesh. So this, it's true. So the new machlokas, we never heard of this before. Not to carry. So this was the Mishnah says you're not allowed to carry according to Bisham. According to Basil, you're allowed to carry. So we're so used to it that you're allowed to carry. We're trying to think, well, who says you're not allowed to carry? Now the Gemara's going the other way. Why are you allowed to carry? Why should we be allowed to carry? It doesn't say in the Torah carry. So the Gemara has two possibilities. One is mitoch, that since it's a mut malacha, which is mut of ochel nefesh, it's mut even not ochel nefesh, and or the other possibility is no such heter of mitoch. That there is because there's no issue of carrying one of the 39 malachas doesn't apply to Yantif, and it's a pasuk in Yirmiyah. Although Sasiu Masa and the Drash is after Shabbos, but Yantif is mutter to carry, and it's an exception to the rule. That's the two possibilities. Pshat and Beisala. Maskef law Rav Yosef. Rav Yosef wants to prove his pshat. That is because of mitoch. If the machlokes is if you're allowed to carry or not, they should have argued about stones. So I'll say Rashi's pshat. Rashi says Avanim is an example of muktzah. They should argue: is there a stone is muktzah because it has no use, and the machlokes is there isser of muktzah on Yantif? Rashi says a big yisod that has a Gemara in Shabbos also that says that the reason why they made Israel of muktzah is because you might come to carry. Why is muktzah? Why is there such thing as muktzah? Of course, muktzah is drabanan. What's the invention of muktzah? Why do they make things on muktzah? It's not a malacha. You're just moving around the hammer. You're just moving around the stones. Why should? So you won't come to carry. You won't come to carry. So you're saying you could learn that you might don't take a hammer. You might come to bang. You might start to build. That's a little different. Gemara is saying, according to Rashi, that don't move around the hammer because you might come to carry it outside. All the muktzah is because you might come to carry from Rishus Yachad to Rishus Rabbim. Rashi says really it should have asked it even carrying anything. Don't touch anything. You might come to carry it outside. Even an apple, don't carry because you might come to. But he says you have to. It's impossible. And it's you can't go around the whole Shabbos not touching anything. You're not going to come to. It's too hard. But in principle, they would have asked it to carry the muktzah of everything because you might come to carry it outside. Like the Gemara says, they even asked it sometimes at one point by Nehemiah. But anyway, the Gemara seems to be asking, according to Rashi, that if you say that the Yisod of Beisil is because there's no Issur of carrying, period, there's no Issur of carrying on Yantif, so then they shouldn't have made an Issur of Muktzah on Yantif. The whole Issur of Muktzah is because you might come to carry. If there's no Issur to carry, so there's no Issur of Muktzah. So from that it proves that the Pshat of Mishnah is not because there's no Issur of carrying. There is an Issur of carrying. There's an Issur of like all the 39 malachas, but there's a special letter of Mitoch Shotru L'Tzorach, Shotru L'Tzorach, and that's the reason why there is a Muktzah, because there is sometimes Issur to carry. Rashi points out what is going to be this at the carry. Rashi says that even after we say mitoch, and Rashi says with the Raisa, you'd be allowed to do all the malachas that you could do for ochel nefesh. You could even do not for ochel nefesh, but it has to be some tzorach. This just everyone. This is the halacha l'maisa that even though we say mitoch, we pass not bisela, but it has to be some tzorach. Even though it doesn't have to be ochel nefesh, but it has to be some tzorach. If it's not a tzorach at all, then it is us. Rashi says with Rabbanan, Taisa says with the Raisa that all these malachas, shchita, bishul, making a fire, carrying, even though you're not doing it for ochel nefesh, it's mutter, because since it's mutter for ochel nefesh, it's mutter even not ochel nefesh, provided, this is the provided, that it's doing it for a tzarech yantif. It is some, you're doing it for a purpose, you do need it. If you don't need it at all, like all the cases of the Mishnah, say for Torah, you want to learn. Something else. What do you mean to say?
Well,
maybe
the cigarette smokers is not ochel nefesh, so why are they smoking?
so we'll say mitoch. So far we'd say mitoch shetu l'tzarech v'tishalol. So far the cigarette smokers get through the sugya.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
But now I'm saying I just want to stress the provided that it's only when it's a tzorach. It has to be
By them,
even
it's
though
smokers, they go crazy.
right. Okay, there's going to be later on. We have a sugya that's really you shouldn't. It's not going to smoke on yantif because the Gemara is going to say I don't mean to get into it now, but there on the Gemara is going to say it has to be shachal l'chol nefesh. It has to be a tzorach which is universal, and smoking is not universal nowadays. Surely not. Maybe 20 years ago everybody would have smoked maybe, but 30, 40 years ago. But now what? They came out very strongly. Very strongly they came out not to smoke on yantif. They say always don't smoke in the weekday either, but they're posting very strong posting, very strong. Don't smoke, us to smoke on yantif. I do see people smoking, but very many poskim say that even if you smoke, which you shouldn't, even in the weekday, but not to smoke on yantif because it's not shavuot l'chol nefesh. It's not a sugi now, but you mentioned it, so I threw it in. But sugi here is talking about anything which is mutter for ochel nefesh is mutter even not to smoke ochel nefesh, like we say, but it still has to be a tzorach yontif. Rashi says B'Rabbanan means if there's not a tzorach at all, Rashi says it's Asher B'Rabbanan, Taisa says it's even Asher B'Deraisa. It has to be a tzorach.
So that's the thing that carrying the tells.
Right. Then that's the Moshe said now that carrying talis to shul, you need it for now. But now I don't need it anymore. I'm not allowed to carry it home. So we spoke about that. Maybe in order that it shouldn't get lost and these things is a heter. So I heard that the poskim are matir it. I don't understand well why, but they do say that's also tzorach if you shouldn't lose it. But I don't want to say it yet authoritatively because I didn't look into it. But by taking this, whatever you need to shul, whatever you need is even though it's not for ochel nefesh allowed to do because it is for mitoch. And that's how the Gemara comes out. That's how we pass it. Rabbi Yochanan Sava b'mitoch shutra atzal l'tzorach u'janam mishalol l'tzorach pligi. So we mentioned two possibilities in our Mishnah, and we said there's a machlokis, and the Gemara challenged. Rav Yosef seemed to knock off the pshat of saying that there's no issue of carrying. Specifically, one malach gets knocked down out of the 39. There's one malach that doesn't apply carrying because of the pasuk in Yirmiyah. Rav Yosef knocked him down because then it should have said there's no issue of muksa at all, and there is an issue of muksa on yantiv. So therefore, the pshat must be mitoch. And now the Gemara says Rav Yochanan also agrees to that. We had a Risa Rav Dimri and Rav Yosef, and now Rav Yochanan also agrees that the pshat on our Mishnah is going to be mitoch. Rav Yochanan also holds that the machlokas b'sham Abi Hillel is if do you say that since it was permitted the tzorach, which means the tzorach ochel nefesh, so it's also mutter even if it's not the tzorach ochel nefesh. The Tani, now we're going to prove the rest of the Gemara is just going to show that Rav Yochanan also holds that pshat on our Mishnah. But the svara of Abi Hillel that permits you to carry is because of mitoch. Just to go back a second about shechting on yantif, are you allowed to shecht olas on the dove on yantif? So they still should permit it also because we have mitoch, so it's not going to be the raisa. And is it called a tzorach? Maybe it's called maybe a mitzvah, the same way in our Mishnah, taking a lulav or learning or a katan that they talk about doesn't only mean to circumcise the katan, it even means take a walk. You want to take a walk, a stroll, are you allowed to go with the carriage? So that's called a tzorach yantif. So maybe if a person wants to be a carbon, maybe also it would even mutter. I'm just suggesting a possibility. Maybe when it says before that you're not allowed to bring a nadav, not nadav on yantif, maybe Beisil would permit. I think you're not allowed to, but in our Gemara, it seems to pass that Beisil will say that even allowed to bring a carbon olas and on yantif also, if it's called a tzorach, that you bring in a carbon. Now the Gemara goes to say that Rabbi Yochanan, I'm going to prove Rabbi Yochanan also agrees that that's pshat in our Mishnah, that the reason why Beisil says that you're allowed to carry is because mitoch shehutra l'tzorach shalol l'tzorach. Since it's a kind of a malacha which is mutter ochel nefesh, it's mutter even not tzorach ochel nefesh, as long as there's some tzorach. The Tana can made Rabbi Yochanan. We're going to prove what Rabbi Yochanan holds because Tana said to Rabbi Yochanan the following brisa. He said, "I'm a vashel gid anashe b'cholah b'yamtiv v'acholah." A person cooked the gid anashe. Gid anashe is the, how do they call it? The range sinew that you're not allowed to eat that gid, one of the veins, one of the sinews of the animal that you're not allowed to eat. And he cooked it with meat. And we're going to say the gid anashe is considered basa, it's considered meat, and meat and milk, you're not allowed to cook meat and milk together. And he on yantiv, and he ate it. He chose yantif to do all this. He cooked gid anashe together with milk on yantif, and he ate it. Loka chomesh, it's chayiv malchus 5 times. He's chayiv 5 times 39 malchus. Loka mishum b'vashel gid, loka mishum ochel gid, loka mishum b'vashel basa b'cholav, loka mishum ochel basa b'cholav, but loka mishum havara. The next word on the Amud Beis is over there. Up. Mishum havara, before making a fire. So go back again just to see the 5 things over there. He's chayiv for cooking. It says b'vashel gid. It doesn't mean there's no issue to cook for gid anashe. There's issue to cook on yantif if you're not going to do it for ochel nefesh. It's not ochel nefesh because you're not supposed to eat it, and also it maybe is not even considered edible. The gid anashe is not considered edible. So he cooked on yantif for nothing. He's chayiv malchus for eating a gid anashe. That's a aver in itself. Even in the week they're not allowed to eat a gid anashe. He's chayiv malchus for cooking basa b'cholav. Cooking basa b'cholav is also a aver even in the weekday. You're not allowed to cook basa b'cholav. Even if you're not going to eat it, there's one avera to eat it, and there's also avera to have an from it after it was cooked, and you're not allowed to cook it even if you don't eat it. So, and also,
even though it's a gid, we're saying it's basar.
as far it probably holds that it's considered basar. As far as basar b'cholav is considered basar, it's considered yesh begin to benosin tam. So it's enough to make basar b'cholav. And therefore, if you cooked it together with milk, he's chayiv malchus for cooking basar b'cholav. And also he ate it. Lo kamishim mochel basar b'cholav. That's also chayiv malchus because the gid anash is considered enough to be considered eating basa b'cholav. It gave a tam of meat into the milk, and now he ate that. So he's chayiv malchus for that also. That's ready for cooking on yantif, eating gid anashe, cooking basa b'cholav, eating basar b'cholav, and Havara is making a fire on Yom Tov. Again, he made a fire for nothing, because what did he do with the fire? He made the fire in order to cook a Gila Nasha with milk. You're not allowed to. So two of them are Hilchos Yom Tov. Cooking and making a fire are two separate malachas of the 39, and both of them, it says that you chayiv malchus for. That was what was said to Rabbi Yochanan. And now Rabbi Yochanan is going to kick into the brisa and say what happened to Mitoch. You're saying it's true, he did it not tochel nefesh, but it's a kind of a malacha, both making a fire and cooking are malachas which are done for ochel nefesh. If you hold a mitoch, so then it shouldn't be chayiv malchus for doing these malachas, even though he did not do it for ochel nefesh, because it's a malacha which is done for ochel nefesh. Mitoch shutru l'tzarech ochel nefesh, but the namish lo l'tzarech ochel nefesh. That was a Yochanan's kasha. What does it mean? That if Yochanan saw in our Mishnah, he still holds a mitoch. Means Rabbah was challenging the whole thing. Rabbah said, "Who says mitoch?" They still also doesn't hold the mitoch. He does hold it. He said to carry on yantiv. But you see, Rabbi Yochanan held Pshat in our Mishnah that it is Pshat Beisil is because of mitoch, and therefore he said that this brisa is not like Beisil. Amalei, Rabbi Yochanan said to this Tana, "Puk Tani lebra, go out and take this brisa outside." Means don't bring this brisa into the Beis Medrash. It's not a good brisa. Take it out. Say it outside if you want to. Don't say it over here. Why? Avar Bishal in the Mishnah that 2 out of the 5 is making a fire on Yontif and cooking on Yontif. It's not true. It's not true that it's chayiv malchus because mitoch shutru l'tzarech u'tu namish lo l'tzarech. If it is an authentic brisa, then it's Beishamai, it's not Beisila. So, what do you see from Rabbi Yochanan? That he wouldn't be chayiv for making a fire and for cooking something which is not edible, because Beishamai Beisila holds mitoch. Because only Beishamai, Dami lo minan mitoch shutru l'tzarech hosal l'tzarech u'tu namish lo l'tzarech achinami lo minan mitoch shutru havar l'tzarech u'tu namish lo l'tzarech. If anything, the price only can be Beishamai, that you see in our Mishnah, he doesn't hold that you're allowed to carry if it's not for ochel nefesh. So too he holds that you're not allowed to make a fire, or you're not allowed to cook if it's not for ochel nefesh. And that's therefor, if you cooked or made a fire for the Gila Nasha with the basar b'cholav, Yitaka will be chayiv according to Beishamai. The Beis Hillel, Chivan the Amri mitoch shutru atzal l'tzarech u'tu namish lo l'tzarech, achanami mitoch shutru havar l'tzarech u'tu namish lo l'tzarech. Just like in our Mishnah, as far as carrying, they say, it still says that since if you're allowed to carry for food, so you're allowed to carry with the rice at least, even not for food. So too, since you're allowed to make a fire and you're allowed to cook for food, so you'd be allowed to make a fire and cook even if it's not for food. So this case of the rice that says that you are chayiv is against Beis Hillel. So we have who was it? Risik Rav Dimi, Rav Yosef, Rav Yochanan. Now all of them say pshat in our Mishnah is mitoch, and that's how we paskin. That even if you're doing something which is not for ochel nefesh, since it's a malacha which would be mutter for ochel nefesh, so it's mutter midiraisa. Even now you're not doing it for ochel nefesh, but it does have to be some sort of yantif. Rashi says midrabanan, Taisa says midiraisa. If that's good.
So, but the Gemara brings that over here just the gear so that Mishnah Beishamai,
Right, the Shammai Shoulder doesn't hold the mito. That's no question. The Shammai doesn't hold the mito. He still holds the mito. According to Beishamai, there's no such thing as mito, so all these things will be chayiv for. The 5 things could go according to Beishamai. That's what it says. Either erase the brisa or it's Beishamai. But according to Beishamai, it's not true because you hold the mito. That's how we pass. We hold mito. Any malacha which is mutter for ochel nefesh is mutter even shalom, not for ochel nefesh, but it must be a zarech yantiv. Next Mishnah. So this next, till now, the base Mishnah was very relevant. The carrying, that's very relevant to us. But the next Mishnah is not so relevant because we don't do these things nowadays. We hope that soon we'll be doing them. Here it talks about challah and Zerul Chayam V'Keva. Zerul Chayam V'Keva could be relevant to people with Shechtan Yantif, but in our regular scenario, we don't do that. But here it talks about the mitzvah of challah and the mitzvah of matanos. Matanos means Zerul Chayam V'Keva. Challah means when you make a dough, you have to separate part and give it to the Kohen. It's like truma. And nowadays, the problem that with tamei, the challah becomes tamei, so the Kohen has nothing to do with it. So we don't usually give it to the Kohen. We just put it in a bag or burn it, and you make sure nobody eats it. But you have to be separated because you have to take off challah, that the rest of it should become permissible to eat. But the challah itself, you have nothing to do with. So we just put it in a bag and throw it out or burn it. And it could question if it's the rice or not, but in Chutz La'aretz it's also the Rabbanan. They take off challah, yeah. So here, there's no difference at that point because both of them are tamei. So challah tamei, you have nothing to do with challah tamei. Challah tamei is like truma tamei, and the Kohen has nothing to do with it. You can never give it to the Kohen. He's going to say, "Well, what should I do with it?"
In terms of burning, heat, light, whatever, it's not us for zart.
No one benefits from nowadays. When you burn it, no one's going to be benefiting from it.
heating up your.
No, they don't use it. They only uses they say also you don't have to burn it. It's enough just to put it in a bag and throw it out. There's only down the bazit. But even if you make a fire, no one's benefiting from the heat nowadays. You're not using it for fuel. So the Mishnah now talks about
It doesn't give comment to the oven.
it's true to so make sure that it doesn't touch anything. When you burn challah, make sure that it doesn't trafe up your pots because it's true to
So you put it in a aluminum foil.
I think so. But it's easier not to burn it. If you want to, you can just, I heard that one of them say it's enough just to put it in a bag and throw it out. It shouldn't be mavazit. I don't know if you have to burn it. The Mishnah now talks about giving, we went off the subject a little bit about Truma Tmei. Nowadays, have nothing to do with the challah, so we don't find giving the challah to the Kohen. But when challah is tohar, you're supposed to give it to the Kohen. It's not just to separate it. You have to give it to the Kohen, like Truma. So the question is, are you allowed to bring it to the Kohen on Yantif? Also, matanos. Matanos means when you shech the chulin, an animal, not carbon, not a carbon. A chulin animal says the mitzvah to give to the Kohen 3 organs: the zroa, the chayayim, and the keva. The zroa is the leg, and the chayayim is the cheek, which includes the tongue also, and the keva is the stomach. And the question is that when a person shechs is supposed to do that, do they do it nowadays? They're supposed to do it nowadays. What do they do in the slaughterhouses? That's another question. How do they get around that in the slaughterhouses? But the pashas is anybody that slaughters a chulin animal is supposed to give zroa, chayayim, keva to the Kohen. Here the case is that on Yantif, he wants to give it to the Kohen. Either a challah that's tohar, he wants to give it to the Kohen. He wants to give these matanos. Matanos means again zroa, chayayim, keva. Everything's called matas kahuna, but these specifically are called matas kahuna. The matanos means v'nasan la kohen azroa b'al chayayim v'akeva. So-
only in Eretz Yisrael sources.
I forget.
It's, it's not a mitzvah to leave Eretz.
Right.
Sure.
So I forget. So the Mishnah says now the issue is, are you allowed to bring it to the Kohen? So that's a little hakdama, is that truma you're not allowed to be mafresh on Yantif and Shabbos because it's a tikkun, and they seem to say the pashas will be the subject that you're not allowed to give it to the Kohen either. Besides separating it, which has to be separated before Shabbos and Yantif, there could be that it's this to bring it to the Kohen. Bring it to the Kohen before Shabbos and Yantif. Also, we're talking about challah. Challah, you are, if you made the dough on Yantif, you are allowed to take off the challah, and if you shechted on Yantif, you are allowed to take the matanas off. But there's going to be an issue: are you allowed to bring it to the Kohen or not? We had just to point out, we had a couple of pages ago. We had that. Okay, but that's the question. There might be xera. Yeah, but there might be a problem that xera might come to be mafresh also. You're not allowed to be mafresh trumas and maasros on Yantif and Shabbos. So if you're going to bring it to him, you might be mafresh and give it to him. So maybe that's going to be included in the xera. And this whole sugya today revolves around that. Is the initiative to bring the matanas and the challah or the zroa, chayayim, the keva to bring it to the Kohen. And truma also is going to be in the subject. A lot of truma. So the Mishnah starts off. The Shammai says you're not allowed to. You're not allowed to. Now, even if you took off the truma today, you took off the challah today, you took off the matanas today, you're still not allowed to give it to the Kohen. No difference. It says, the words are, you're not allowed to bring the challah and the matanas to the Kohen on Yantif, both if they were separated yesterday, before Yantif, and even if they were separated today. Even if they were separated today, so you couldn't bring it yesterday. I only separated it today. Still, you're not allowed to give it to the Kohen. But you're still matirin. It still says you're allowed to. You're allowed to. And it seems to say that even if it was yesterday's, it still also seems to say that you're allowed to. It seems to be extreme that Beis Shammai says you're not allowed to give at all the challah and matanas to the Kohen on Yantif, and Beis Hillel says you're allowed to. No difference if it was today's or yesterday's. Amul lahem Beis Shammai. Beis Shammai said, you agree that truma you're not allowed to. You're not allowed to give the Kohen the truma. Gzeira Shava, you should compare them. Rashi says Gzeira Shava doesn't mean a regular Gzeira Shava. Usually Gzeira Shava means a psukim, a link, a certain code. But here we're talking about Rabbanans, and there's no Gzeira Shava. So it means another way of saying comparison. Why don't you compare them? Gzeira Shava should be the same. Challah matanas matanas l'kohen. Truma matanas l'kohen, but they're all similar. That they things that were supposed to go to the Kohen. And you agree that you're not allowed to give truma to the Kohen. So how come you're saying you're allowed to give challah matanas? Kishem shem malichan as a truma, kachem malichan as a matanas. They should be the same. Just like you agree that you're not allowed to give truma to the Kohen, you should also agree that you're not allowed to give challah and these matanos to the Kohen. It's not the same. No, not the same. Truma, there's never a case that you're allowed to take it off, you're allowed to mafresh it, you're allowed to separate it on Shabbos and Yantif. There's a Issa Rabbanan, ain't like being Trumas and Maishas Yantif, and Shabbos and even Yantif. But on Challah and the Truma and these matanas, Zra'el, Chayim, V'Keva, you are allowed to separate them on Yantif. Like we said, that since you're allowed to make a dough on Yantif, so it's impossible to have taken it off before Yantif. You can't take off the challah until you made a dough. And since you're allowed to make a dough, what are you going to do? How are you going to eat the bread? If you don't take off challah, you can't eat it. So Chazal said that this issue of not taking off tumas and maishos doesn't apply to challah. You're allowed to take off challah. And also matanos, you shechted an animal, so you're allowed to give the parts that go to the kohen. You're allowed to give it to the kohen. You're allowed to separate it. Rashi says you're allowed to separate it because or else you're going to eat it. This doesn't become tevel over there. The animal is not tevel before you separate it, but you want to separate it in order that I shouldn't end up eating it. So since challah and matanos, you're allowed to separate on yantif, you're also allowed to give it. So Basil says the difference between tumas and maishos. Tumas and maishos says you never find that you're allowed to separate it on yantif. So therefore, don't give it on yantif. They included it in the issa. Don't separate it. Don't even give it. Then therefore, don't even give it. But challah and matanos, since you are allowed to separate it on yantif, you're allowed to give it also. That's what the Mishnah says. Machlokes v'sham v'silel. Beis Shammai says that the issur of giving to the kohen applies not only to truma, even to challah and matanos. And Beis Hillel says no, only truma, because that you're never allowed to take off on yantif. So you don't give it either. But challah that you are challah and truma, challah and matanos that you are allowed to separate on yantif, you're allowed to give it also on yantif. If that's good, the Gemara continues. The Gemara doesn't talk about, let's say, about the matanos. When did you shech the animal? It just talks about, Beis Shammai says, even if you separated it today. But theoretically, you could have a case where you shechted it yesterday and you separated it today, or by challah. You could talk about that when did you make the dough? It says that you didn't take it, even if it was separated today. But did you make the dough yesterday? Did you make the dough today? The Mishnah doesn't say. And the Gemara thinks that when it says even hayom, it means even if it was nishchatu hayom, even if you just shechted the animal today. Not only did I separate the matanos that was shechted yesterday, I even shechted it today. I shechted today the animal, and then I also took off the matanos. I want to give that's the best case. The most lenient case would be that I shechted the animal today, and I also separated the matanos. Now I want to give it to the kohen. Or I made the dough now, and I separated the challah. I want to give it to the kohen. So the Mishnah doesn't say specifically, but the Gemara thinks that that's included by Shammai. Even in the most lenient case, is also going to be machmir. Even if you shechted the animal, or you made the dough today, and you separated these challah matanos, also you're not allowed to give it to the kohen. And that's what the Gemara is going to discuss. Is that true? The Gemara first introduces his first thought that when it says homu hayom, it means even nishchatu hayom. Even if it was shechted today also, and I surely couldn't have taken off yesterday. If it was only homu hayom, was nishchatu esmol, so I could have taken the matanos off yesterday also. But we're taking the assumption that when the Mishnah says that it was homu hayom, it was also nishchatu hayom. That you shechted the animal today, you took off the matanos, you want to give it to the kohen, and the Rav says no, don't give it to the kohen. Beis Shammai said. That's the Gemara's assumption. What?
I'm going to go back. It was yesterday's shechita, and you're not giving it today. By tomorrow, there's no deep freezes in the Beit Mikdash.
It's not Beis Mikdash over here. We're talking about. We're talking about any place in the world. I mean, in Eretz Israel, we're talking about Yehuda. It's not talking about a carbon over here. We're not talking about. Carbon. Zroel Chayam V'Keva applies to Chulin. So he had an animal that he wants to shech. He takes a Zroel Chayam V'Keva. He wants to give it to the Kohen, and Beis Shammai says no.
There's no freezers. With all our history in the freezers. What are you going to do? 2 days.
Not 2 days.
Shechita, we're not giving today either.
He should have given it yesterday. He didn't give it yesterday. He should have given it yesterday. He didn't give it. But he should. Don't give it on Yantif. So I have to wait till tonight. So he's saying, what is he going to do? I hear.
2 days.
Trying to keep it cold.
4 days and nothing passed on to the Kohen. It's going to go rotten. He's forcing Matan Kuna to go back.
Okay, so he should have given it yesterday. If it was today, so then give it tonight. Give it as soon as Yantif is over. So here the Gemara goes. For last narrow line. If this is so then our Mishnah is only going to fit with Acherim, not with Yossi, not Abuda. So now we're going to have a long brisa, and that's going to bring 3 opinions that are all going on the subject of our Mishnah. And the Gemara is going to say that so far it only seems to fit with Acherim, not with Rab Yossi, and not with Abuda. So here the Gemara starts. I'm Rab Yehuda. So now so far we got our Mishnah, but now we're going to see other opinions that say a little different. I'm Rab Yehuda. L'nachluku b'Shammai Beis Hillel al matana shomu me'ev yomtiv shemulichin em matana shomu me'hayom v'shenishchatu me'hayom. Just to emphasize those words, we'll come back to these words. V'shenishchatu hayom. Third one line. Nishchatu hayom. Rab Yehuda says 2 points that we didn't think about. One is that he says that if it was shechted today, and not only separated today, it was even shechted today. That the animal was shechted today, and you separated the matanos, you're allowed to bring that to the Kohen and Yantif. And not only that, that's like Pashat Rav Yehuda. And not only that, even if you're bringing that, if you happen to have also yesterday's matanos, you're allowed to take that along also, like a tafel. if you have something which is mutter because it was today's and that you are allowed to take, our Mishnah seems to say that even today's you're not allowed to take according to Beis Shammai. And here he says 2 points. Beis Shammai says that if you have today's, you're surely allowed to take that, and if together with today's, you're allowed to. Rabbi Yehuda says according to Beis Shammai. Rabbi Yehuda has, Rabbi Yehuda has a later Dana, and he's saying top the first white line. Beis Shammai both agree that if you have today's matanos to take, that was shechted today and homu today, you're allowed to take along yesterday's also. You give a package deal. That's like a double chiddush. That first of all today's you're allowed to take, and not only that, if you're taking today's, you're allowed to take yesterday's also. So what is the machlokis? The third white line. If you only have yesterday's, that Beis Shammai says you're not allowed to. You can't take yesterday's alone. You could take yesterday's. And now the Gzer the drush of Beis Shammai to say that it's usher is because chala matanas matanas lekohen, truma matanas lekohen, kishem shem malichin as truma, kachem malichin as matanas. Same as our Mishnah. Beis Shammai said that there's a thing by truma you agree not allowed to take, so you shouldn't be allowed to take chala either. But we still said back to them, no. That you're not allowed to be mafish the truma on yantif. That's why you're not allowed to take it. But since by matanas and chala that you are allowed to take it off on yantif, so also you're allowed to give it on yantif also, and together with that you're allowed to take yesterday's also. So that's the end of the first opinion. That was Rabbi Yehuda so far. From the first white line till there was all Rabbi Yehuda, and the Mishnah is against him because we said in our Mishnah, Beis Shammai says you're not allowed to even take today's. And he says he's allowed to take today's, even allowed to take together with that yesterday's also. Our Mishnah didn't discuss if you're allowed to take anything else, but he says you're not allowed to even take today's. So that's surely against our Mishnah.
Is it the same brisa that Rabbi Yossi continues?
Yeah, one big brisa. Rabbi Yossi, the brisa continues, a different opinion. Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yossi is going to be very lenient, extremely lenient. Everybody agrees that you're allowed to take matanas. Matanas means when you shecht an animal, you have to give the 3 organs to the Kohen, and that he says, everybody, even Beis Shammai says you're allowed to take. That's mamish against our Mishnah. Our Mishnah says you're not allowed to take matanas. He says, Beis Shammai says you could take matanas. What's the drasha? What's the machlokis? And that's mamish against our Mishnah. He says here that Beisil holds you allowed to take truma also. Our Mishnah, Beisil agreed that you're not allowed to take the truma. Only chala matanas was the issue. But truma, they still agreed. Yeah, you're not allowed to take truma because you're not allowed to take off truma. So you're not allowed to give it to the Kohen. But this brisa of Yossi says that Beisil holds even allowed to give truma. Don't take the truma to the Kohen, but you could even take the truma to the Kohen. The Kachel Beisil done. Now Beisil is the one who makes the drush according to this version. Truma matanas lekohen. They're all matanas lekohen. So make a comparison to them. Just like you agree that you're allowed to take matanos royal chayam chala kach molichin as a truma. Take truma also. What's the difference? So Beis Shammai said no. There's a difference. The opposite. Lo imam matanos shazaki bar masa. The reason why you're allowed to take matanos, I agree, because you're allowed to be mafished on yantif. But truma that you're not allowed to be mafish, you're not allowed to take. So this brisa Rabbi Yossi is showing against our Mishnah because he says that you're allowed to take truma also according to Beisil. And even Beis Shammai is allowed to take matanos. Our Mishnah said the opposite on both counts. Beis Shammai says that you're not allowed to take matanos, and Beisil says also says you're not allowed to take truma. So that's mamish against our. And now we have the third opinion is Achim, and the Gemara introduced so far that Achim could be with our Mishnah. So we're hoping to see something similar to our Mishnah. Usually are Meir. Okay, that feels very nice. Then everybody agrees truma you cannot take. Feels very nice with our Mishnah. The machlokus is about matanos. That's where Beis Shammai is going to say no. Beisil is going to say yes. Very nice, like our Mishnah. Beis Shammai the matanos. Beisil says you could. That's the end of the brisa. We had 3 opinions. Rabbi Yossi was the most makel, that even the truma Beisil holds you could, and Beis Shammai holds the matanos you could take. Rabbi Yehuda was also more makel than our Mishnah, that he said if it was today's, you're allowed to take today's even according to Beis Shammai, and with that you could even take yesterday's together, and our Mishnah didn't seem to say like that. And Achim seems to be like our Mishnah, that you cannot take, and he seems to say a blanket statement, you can't take matanos, and you according to Beis Shammai, and Beisil agrees you can't take truma. Okay, very nice. So the Gemara ends off what it started with. It seems to be that our Mishnah only fits with Achim and not Rabbi Yehuda. Surely not Rabbi Yossi, but not even Rabbi Yehuda. But now the Gemara is going to reconcile our Mishnah with Rabbi Yehuda could fit. Again, what Rabbi Yehuda say? That if it was shechted today, you may take it. If it was today's mamish, not only humu today, it's even shechted today. You may take it to the Kohen, and together with that, even yesterday's also. So the Gemara is going to say our Mishnah could agree like that. Our Mishnah doesn't say these words. Our Mishnah doesn't say that it was shechted today. It just says that Beis Shammai says it's also even if it was humu ayom. But that doesn't say even if it was shechted today. That's a bigger chiddush. So our assumption is not accurate. It doesn't say it openly in the Mishnah. Shehumu Ketani, it just says Shehumu, which is mashma maybe that it was shechted yesterday. So the fact that it was just Humu today, that Beis Shammai says not enough. You could have taken it off yesterday. You shechted yesterday, you could have taken it off yesterday. But if you shechted today, maybe Beis Shammai also agrees that you could take it, and that fits with Rabbi Yehuda. The Mishnah that says you're not allowed to take it if it was Humu today is because the case that it was shechted yesterday. But if it was shechted today, even Beis Shammai would be Meiko. And now the Gemara is so happy with this deal that it turns the tables and says, Adrabah, now it's only Rabbi Yehuda and not not Acherim, because Acherim is mashma that is also b'chol gavni, even if it was shechted today. And Amish is mashma that if it was shechted today, you may take it, and that's like Rabbi Yehuda. So on the contrary, now the Gemara turns the tables. Let's say that Amish is dafka Rabbi Yehuda, that it's only also if it was shechted yesterday, but if it was shechted today, you may take it. The Gemara says, possibly not. Maybe you misunderstood Acherim. The Acherim themselves, it isn't so clear. If you go back a couple of lines, let's see if we can find Acherim. Where was Acherim? Acherim Omrim. Here's Acherim Omrim. And it said that everybody agrees that you're not allowed to take Truma. These are the words. That Beis Shammai said you're not allowed to. So the Gemara took it as a blanket statement, but you're not allowed to take. In any case, that was the Gemara's assumption. So it says even if you shechted it today, also you can't take it to the Kohen. But that the Gemara's questioning now says doesn't say that. It doesn't say you can't take matanis in any case. He means to say if we're shechted yesterday, but he also would agree that if we're shechted today, you may take it. Like Rabbi Yehuda. So the Gemara says, if so, what's the machlokes? Bottom line, if you're going to say that Machem also agree that if we're shechted today, you may take it to the Kohen. So then it's not machlokes. We just said the same thing. It's true as far as everything. So if you're allowed to take today's or yesterday's, that's agreed upon. But Rabbi Yehuda had one cooler that the Machem doesn't hold up. Rabbi Yehuda holds if you're taking today's, you're allowed to take yesterday's together with it. Tafel. If you take, since you're taking a package deal, I'm taking today, that's shechted, and I'm now giving it to the Kohen, I'm allowed to take that together with that. I'm allowed to take yesterday's matanis also. Hitching a ride. That Rabbi Yehuda holds, Achem doesn't hold that. But in the issue about taking today's, maybe Achem also agrees that if we shechted today, you'd be allowed to. The Gemara has 2 dots over here, but it's a mistake. It shouldn't be a 2 dots. You could erase the 2 dots. We're going to put it in soon in a couple of lines. These 2 dots we're going to change. We're going to transfer them. Rav Yehuda, Shmuel, Rav Yossi. So it's against our Mishnah. We had 3 opinions: Rav Yehuda, Rav Yossi, and Acherim. We said our Mishnah could be either. Our Mishnah doesn't talk about teaching it right, so it could either be Rav Yehuda or Acherim. That for shechta today, Shammai holds you could take it, but Truma you cannot, even according to Beis Hillel. But now the Gemara comes to pass like Rav Yossi, who's the biggest maker against our Mishnah. You pass like Rav Yossi that according to Beis Hillel, you're even allowed to take Truma to the Kohen also, which is the whole time we didn't dream of that. The Mishnah says not like that. But now we're going to pass like the Bryce Rav Yossi, even against the Mishnah, Rav Yossi, that you're allowed to take Truma. You're not allowed to be mafresh to Truma. Don't make a mistake. That's the whole problem of the Gzera. That Beis Shammai says don't, or Amish says don't take Truma. You might give it, might be mafresh. You're not allowed to be mafresh. But if you're mafresh it before Shabbos or Yantif, you're allowed to take it on Yantif. Namor says a little story that Allah Lamaisa that we pass like Rav Yossi that you're even allowed to take Truma to the Kohen on Yantif also. You can't be mafresh it, but you make, if it was Hufresh before, you are allowed to give it to the Kohen on Yantif.
Even though you have a chance to do it on an Arab.
Right. That there's no issue at all of taking it. The giving it to the Kohen is not a problem anymore. According to Rav Yossi, that's how he passed it. Rav Tuvi, by Rav Lechem, you have a leg gav with the cham of the Truma. Rav Tuvi, the son of Rav Lechem, you had a barrel. I'm sorry, I highlighted the wrong thing. Gav was a barrel of cham was wine of Truma. He had a barrel of wine of Truma, and he had it before Yantif, and he wanted to bring it to the Kohen. I was like, I'm Rav Yosef. I'm late. Ma'alam to you, Kohen. Did I bring it to the Kohen now on Yantif? Amalei, yes. Even though the Mishnah says you're not allowed to, you pass like the price of Rav Yossi that you are allowed to. So there's no issue, according to Beis Hillel, there's no issue even to take Truma, even to bring Truma to the Kohen on Yantif.
But can you take Truma?
No. That's the big Gezerah. Don't do that. Surely don't do that.
Where's
Ain't
your
like being
ending
Truma.
today?
You have to insert the 2 dots over here. Right here,
Where
we're on the 2 dots. After the words Allah Rav Yossi, before the word Ush Bezichne, that's what the 2 dots did before. 4 lines up, the 2 dots is a mistake. That's not the end of the sugi. Here's the end of the sugi.
But if you don't bring it to the Kohen, then you can't eat it?
Yeah, how do you mean? Truma?
Yeah.
You can't eat Truma? Truma? You know,
No, right. But everything else.
What's everything else? Oh, yeah, you're mafresh, so everything else is chulin. Yeah, that's for sure. Then once you mafresh the truma, you put it aside, you put it in a bag, truma, and now the rest of it is chulin. But now you want to give it to the Kohen. So there's those that hold that you're not allowed to give it to the Kohen either because Xer might come to mafresh, and that we don't hold like. So you don't give it to the Kohen, but you may
Eat it now.
eat the rest of the chulin. And what do we say? I'm sorry, what did I say? That we pass like Rabbi Yossi, that you are allowed to give the truma which you separated yesterday. You are allowed to give to the Kohen even on Yom Tov, against our Mishnah. So to sum up today, we have 2 minutes. The Gemara ended off yesterday with the Treason that Beis Hillel also agrees that if it has Sir Min Atzad, that you're not allowed to put it back on because Shema Yivkas Tashis explains you might wedge it in, and that's the Raisa. So if it has Sir Min Atzad, you set on top and on
So
bottom.
there's like tags, right?
Right. So then you're not. It fits into the door into the closet well. So then you're not allowed to put it back on because Xer Shema Yitka. After that we had
How
a
else would it stick on without those?
just sticking it in. After that we had a machlokes. After Mark finishes up, that it still says mitoch. The Mishnah doesn't say those words, and they might even question if that's the pshat. But after we came out, that Rav Yosef, who's that? Rav Yosef, Yitzchak, Rabim, Rav Yochanan, Yosef Pshat Yisrael is mitoch shutru l'tzorach, hutanam mishalol l'tzorach. Mitoch shehutru l'tzorach. You see in the Gemara, hutanam mishalol l'tzorach. Any malacha which is mutter for ochel nefesh is mutter midiraisa, even not for ochel nefesh, but provided that you have to have some tzorach. You have to have some tzorach, and that's how the Gemara comes out. Shabbat Mishnah. The reason why you're allowed to carry the Sefer Torah, the lulav, the katan is because Hutra Shalom L'Tzarech. And it comes out according to that Shechita and what else the Gemara talk about Havara, making a fire, cooking, even if you're doing it not for Chol Nefesh, as long as there's some kind of a tzorach, it would be mutter. And Rashi holds if it's not any tzorach at all, it's Asam Rabban, and Taisus says it's Asam D'Oraisa. After that, we had the Mishnah about this halach of giving the matanos to the Kohen. And even though the Mishnah says that everyone agrees you're not allowed to take, even true, you're not allowed to take, because you could have taken it off yesterday, you have to take it off yesterday, and therefore you're not allowed to bring it to the Kohen today. We're passing against our Mishnah, we pass like Rav Yossi, that if it still doesn't hold that this issue of taking it to the Kohen, it's only us to separate it. But if we're separated before Yom Tov, you'd be allowed to take the Truma and Kabul the Chala and Matanas, you're allowed to give it to the Kohen. The only issue is to separate the Truma on Yom Tov. Chala, we had a Gemara before, yesterday, a few days ago, we passed like a Budi Shmuel against Rav, that if you made the dough before Yom Tov, also you're not allowed to take off Chala on Yom Tov. Gilgal, Me'av Yom Tov, you're not allowed to take the Chala off on Yom Tov. But if you have Chala that you separated before, you are allowed to take it to the Kohen. And surely if you made the dough today and you separated the Challah today, surely you're allowed to take it to the Kohen. It comes out there's no special list of taking it to the Kohen. According to Beis Hillel, it's only a frasha of Truma on Yom Tov and a frasha of Challah that you made a dough yesterday. Also, you're not allowed to be mafresh Challah on Yom Tov. But if you have Challah that's already been separated, you are allowed to take it to the Kohen.
And I'm sorry.
Why are we not worried about, why are we worried about mice? Why are we only worried about truma?
No, we say Truma, Trumas and Manshrus. It's all the same.
Oh, truma and mice is all one.
Yeah.
Just like I remember Masechta for this, I think the Sabu the Shmuel says that you
If you made a dough before Yom Tov, you're not allowed to separate the Challah on Yom Tov. You have to separate it before.
right, but if you make the dough on Yom
Then you are allowed to take off Challah.
because
Yeah.
it's like nefesh.
Yeah. And they didn't make the Xera, Avein Magbiyan, because you're allowed to make a dough. If you're going to make a dough, you're not going to be able to take off Trumas and Maisus. Then you're not going to be able to, the dough is worthless.
Who holds that?
But you can't bring-
Which thing?
That you are allowed to take mice and,
Take? What do you mean take? Tell us
not Challah and matan.
that you're allowed to
Allow you
separate. You're allowed not for Shepard, no, it's not for Shepard. If you made the dough on Yom Tov, you're allowed to take off Trumas. You're allowed to take off Challah. Not Trumas, you're allowed to take off Challah. And if you shecht an animal, you're allowed to take matanas. And now we pass that, and so you're allowed to give it also. You're allowed to give it to the Kohen. And now we're saying that even Truma, what? Yes. There's no, yeah. There's no Xeri you're going to be mafresh. There's no Xeri you're going to be mafresh. Truma. So they didn't make this whole thing of Moldichim is Xeri. You can't come to be mafresh, but you're not allowed to be mafresh. We don't make the Xera. They still doesn't hold of it. You're allowed to even take yesterday's Truma. If you have already Truma mafresh yesterday, you're allowed to also give it to the Kohen. Even by Truma, that's against Amish. Amish says we still also agree Truma, you're not allowed to. But the past like a Yossi, that there's no issue to take it to the Kohen. The whole issue is to be mafresh Truma on Yom Tov. But if you mafresh it before Yom Tov, you would be allowed to give it to the Kohen on Yontif. And we just spoke out halachas about truma, you're not allowed to be mafresh, and challah. We had a gemara a couple of days ago that if you made the dough on Yontif, surely you're allowed to be mafresh. The challah today, and there's a machlokas Rav and Avu de Shmuel. If you made the dough yesterday, would you be allowed to be mafresh challah today? And we passed like Avu de Shmuel that you're not allowed to. If you could have been mafresh challah before Yontif, you're not allowed to be mafresh on Yontif. We'll be back in a couple of minutes, 2 minutes or so. We'll be doing Hilchos and Kippur today.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.